Morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Bruhnke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. We're talking today with two extraordinary leaders in the world of global space, this global space that we do believe is good. Global is good. And this is the second of many programs that we're planning to do on the concept and the initiative of global is good. Mike Patterson, one of our speakers today, was an example that I gave last night as someone who represents all of the aspects of this concept of global is good. He's really smart. He's professional. He's honest. He's ethical. He talks to people, like really talks, and that means listening. Also negotiates and mediates. And when things go south, like we were talking about one particular company that didn't quite work out to our expectations, there were all sorts of funny little things that happened. Mike doesn't make a big deal out of it. He just moves on to something good. And all of those things, I think, are things I admire in Mike. And I sure wish that more people around the world had those attributes. And I bet you do too, because if the world was like that, I guess there'd be a lot less strife and war and a lot less poverty and a lot less problems in the world. So thank you, Mike, for all that you do. Mike is an attorney and partner with Spencer Fane in Phoenix, Arizona, spent 10 years in Mexico, speaks Spanish fluently. I found out last night that he's not a mariachi singer. He is a singer, however, of romantic songs in a trio. I did do some Google searching on that, Mike, and I haven't quite figured out what to call that, but I've heard it, and you're amazing. And he's an extraordinary leader, both in business and in the community. And we really appreciate all that you do, Mike, in Metro Phoenix and in Mexico, across border, and then even with clients in other countries around the world. The legal work that he does in business and in M&A and securities is top notch. So, Mike, thanks for all that you do, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Doug.
Terri Morrison,
thank you very much.
You're the best. Thank you. Terri Morrison, I hate to say goes without saying, but kind of almost goes without saying for those of us that know international business. And she's made a particular impression on my life because when her book, Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands came out, I was a DuPont expatriate in Tokyo, Japan, just trying to figure things out. And the book was, monumentally beneficial for me. I still made mistakes because we're not perfect. There's situations in global business that we just can't predict, and so the faux pas continue to happen. That's why we need to be resilient and flexible and keep learning from our mistakes as well, but also learn from really smart intercultural leaders like Terri Morrison. Turns out, and I didn't know this until she started becoming involved with the book author series here at Global Chamber, that she's from Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, which was right up the street from where I have lived in Westchester, Pennsylvania, along the main line to Philadelphia. And so I didn't realize she was a Philly lady, which probably helps support the work with DuPont as well. But now she's a global leader. Her book has 500,000 copies around the world, and she's not only built that original book, but she's tailored the book to lawyers and a variety of other leaders within business. And so we all can be helped now by this book, and it's even tailored. And she's a speaker, and in addition to being an author. So, Terri, thank you for joining. We're just so honored to hear your perspectives today. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Mike. This is great to be here.
Yeah, we are going to be talking about global is good, and I'm wondering if we could start with the basic question is, or maybe it's a question. Is global good, and what are your sensibilities about that topic? Whether it's the what we've been talking about Global Chamber for the last few weeks at least, and then also what does it mean in your own heart and in your own business and your own life. Terri, would you like to kick things off?
Sure. From my perspective, in a business venue, you don't have a choice if you're a large multinational, because you have a goal probably to grow 10% a year. And once you saturate the US market, you have no choice. You must go external to the US. So it can be challenging if you don't do any research and you just sort of bumble around and say, well, Asia sounds nice, but Asia is 40 some countries and they are all individual environments, particularly if you're trying to cross negotiating styles and languages and belief systems and all the things that can just make a lot of static on the line when you're trying to communicate effectively. But globally, that's going to make you richer, not just economically, but spiritually and personally. It just expands your knowledge base and it helps everyone have a more open and welcoming orientation. So that's how I look at it. Mike?
Yeah, my years living abroad in Latin America, Costa Rica, and several places in Mexico, and then traveling in Latin America and even in Europe have been the richest, some of the richest experiences in my life. Have still ongoing relationships that I value till the end, even today, to stay in touch with those people. In my business as a lawyer, I am reached out to on a regular basis every week by my colleagues. We're 450 lawyers in 22 cities, and they call me and say, Mike, I have something in Saudi Arabia. Can you help? And I do know a lawyer through legal networks I'm a part of, but I'm able to say to them, I not only just have a name on a piece of paper, but I actually know Muhammad in that law firm, and we have a trust relationship of sorts that we built through a few meetings, or at least he knows he can work with me, that he'll get paid. He knows that I'm going to treat him with respect and take his advice, or her advice, lawyer in Paris, that we worked with, or Canada. And so these relationships are key, and I can't blow it for my client too. When I'm negotiating for them and trying to get what they need, or a win-win, hopefully as much as we can situation with the other party in a deal, I can't be the guy that's not skillful and who steps in and does the faux pas that turns off parties on the other side and keeps my client from getting to where they want to be. So I have obligations, but I also love it.
I think that's a really good perspective, is that sometimes things go wrong and we have to be able to recover in a way that is different in Japan than it is here. So recovery in Asia many times involves immediately apologizing, which, as we know here, makes you sound liable, guilty, might get you fired. So those are communication differences, but I've seen things happen because people don't know how to deliver bad news across cultures. We're known as very direct, very blunt almost, and we love telling you the truth almost as much as the Dutch do, right? But you can't do that in Latin America. You can't do that in the Middle East the same way, or in Asia. So I have some background in how to deliver bad news, say in Singapore, when you actually don't want to confront that person ever in public. You hopefully have a third party intermediary that delivers it for you, so you stay out of the fray and no one loses face. You can also use scenarios where you take them to a great dinner, and in between a wonderful meal and at the very end, maybe when you're having dessert or coffee or tea or whatever, that's when you just bring up very gently an idea that is distasteful but has to be communicated between a bunch of compliments. Usually they know what's happening too. they've already picked up on the data. They know subtle communication tips that this meeting may have an issue. So they're much more attuned to the nuances. So you don't want to be direct. So Mike, maybe you have some background stories on that, delivering bad news.
Yes. One of the stories later, I mean, and just is it acceptable to even point out something that's wrong or not? I was playing a men's league fast pitch softball in Mexico City, and I was standing on I was the first base coach kind of, and for our team, ball was hit. It was thrown to first base, and the guy dropped it, and the ball was laying loose on the ground, and the umpire said out, and I said, I pointed at the ball, and I said, no, he's not out. He dropped the ball, and I looked around, and there's 9 people on the field and 18 people in 2 dugouts, all looking at me, the gringo, telling an umpire that he's wrong. And I'm getting looks like, no, Mike, leave it alone. I said, yeah, but the ball's right. And then leave it alone, and I realized this is not the moment, you know what I mean? But and don't insist on that, and so even though it was critical, and then in other circumstances, I've been the friend of the person even in a when we helped a person get a surgery that was critical for him, and he actually, the surgery was successful, but he passed away because of the anesthesia, an anesthesia reaction in the thing, and I was called from my home to come and tell the widow the bad news because neither of the doctors wanted to talk to her, and the intermediary relationship, using an intermediary to tell bad news rather than tell her yourself, type of thing. But the use of an intermediary frequently to tell news, I learned that's becoming my role. And then as an attorney, I'm the man in the middle who is tasked with telling the bad news.
Really good examples on both of those, both the mistake recovery. Hadn't really thought of it in those terms, Terri. Thank you. And then also the delivering bad news. It's going to be very different culture by culture. I wonder, I'd like to ask both of you how you had started in your interest and your capabilities in this. And Terri, you came out with your book, I think in 90 or 91. So it didn't all start that year for you. I think Rochelle Kopp, who's also a member of Global Chamber, through the book author series, where she was in business and she recognized the need because there were all sorts of problems being developed and it caused business to go off the rails. So she said, hey, I've got to fix this. And in my case, I kind of became the accidental global guy because nobody wanted the job in Asia. And I was the young guy who said, I'll do it. And then I found out it was like, wow, this is amazing. So is there anything in either of those stories that relates to your story?
Yes, that was easily a path I always was interested in. I started out as a Spanish teacher. That was my first job out of undergrad. And so every scenario that I've ever done, every travel situation, somehow I observe situations that are culturally based, not business issues, just like, nepotism's a good thing in the majority of the world. So if you want to work in Brazil, where I was, it was all of the people that you knew who were in environments that you would like to get into. You had to know somebody that was related to them, because it's almost a moral obligation if you have a great position in Brazil that your extended family, which could be hundreds of people, will all look to you for help becoming employed in some venue. It doesn't have to be your firm, but everything is done through, like Mike said, relationships in about 70% of the world. There's us in Northern Europe that basically doesn't do that. We're transactional, right? But that was an initial interest in high school, through college, through my first job, and then I went into high tech. And that's when I started to observe the situations that Rochelle, who's brilliant, also encountered, and so many of us encounter, that these are problems that recur too, because we don't do any due diligence about the soft skills many times. But even attorneys, like this with my newest book, was published by the American Bar Association. Attorneys have so much data to absorb, they become a little myopic sometimes, just like many of us, about issues that don't directly relate to their legal responsibilities. But if you're a Mike, you're the guy that they're going to rely on to be that intermediary, because he is sensitive to that. So yeah, I learned about it from childhood almost, that this is an exciting field. Can't hear.
You're on mute, Doug.
Oh, thank you very much. So this has been burning inside you for quite a while, and at some point you just said, "I've just got to do this," and then somehow came up with a brilliant title too. Congratulations.
Thank you. But that was also a digital product before the book.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
actually, that's how I got into DuPont and AT&T first, was because I built this Kiss Bow online. And then they were printing out all of these, country profiles, and said, "We want you to do this because this is a lot of work." And I said, "No, I don't want to do binders." So they said, "You better do something." I got the great book called The Writer's Market. And that's how I contacted publishers and ended up with the first Kiss Bow or Shake Hands. Sorry, I keep interjecting data, sorry.
What a journey. Thank you. Mike, at some point you recognized that you're proficient in this and interested in this, and you migrated toward working internationally because you're good at it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I've really enjoyed it. I started out working with the poor in a community development role. I was not a lawyer, and living in Latin America. And at one point I was in 34 homes a week was my schedule, with 34 families that I was working with, and just most very poor, but treated me with just such, I was just overwhelmed at how people that didn't even have a nickel to spend would send their daughter or son down the block to get a soda at the corner store for Mike, and they weren't going to have it, but they were going to serve me a soda because I was the royal guest in the home at that moment. You know what I mean? And I was having to really work out because I was having to eat everything they served me at every one of those appointments, out of courtesy. And it was great food, but I enjoyed every bit of it. But you don't say no. And I treasure those moments, and yes, look forward to it. And then yes, moving into the business side, it's one of the things on Even Telling Bad News. I was going to say, I was at a NAFINSA conference in Mexico City. Fox was presenter. I got to present because I got President Fox to the conference. And so when it was my turn to talk, they asked me to talk about cross-cultural issues working with U.S. companies. And one of the things I talked about was how to tell your U.S. counterpart when there's a problem. You're supposed to deliver 500 widgets on the 31st of this month, and it's halfway through the month, and you're not going to make it. You're going to have 250 done correctly, and you're going to have another 250 that are 3/4 of the way done. What do you do? And one cultural reaction from their side would be, well, I'm not going to talk about it. We're going to you know, some people, their knee jerk would be, I'm going to wind down to the end and maybe even just send 250 or send 250 and another 250 half done, you know, type of thing. And I urged that the U.S. expectation would be you will get a better result if you pick up the phone and start communicating, give data, give information that makes that makes your counterpart they're a lot more amenable to working out a solution with you. And in addition to other things I was talking about that Terri is more of an expert on where you stand, how you greet, and that kind of thing. And I was an amateur in comparison, but giving some tips that day. But that really struck me because I had seen several examples of that, including one where I was in a law firm in Mexico City, and we had a major network client in the United States in the firm, and I was the token gringo in the law firm, and they all one morning I'm called into the conference room, and they had a round table, like the Knights of the Round Table, and there are these executives from Los Angeles from this network, and there's all the partners in the Mexican law firm, and they said, Mike, we've got a problem. We want you to help us resolve this. And I said, and I didn't know anything about it. And I said, what's the problem? They said, well, we asked them for 4 things. The executive said, we asked the law firm for 4 things 2 months ago. And on time, the first week, we got 2 of the questions answered. And the other 2 were not even addressed. And so then we asked, when are we going to see those? And we said, those will be in a couple of weeks. And the couple of weeks came and went. And one of the questions was halfway answered. And so I'm sorry, but here we are down here, and this is, I could hear in their voice, if this doesn't get done right, you're done. And so they said, Mike, your tasks with, I didn't know anything about substantively the legal issue. That was for the Mexican lawyers who were helping me. But in terms of the timing and delivery of it, Mike, your task with making sure this works. And so I said, okay, can we have, you know, another week and a half and we've set a date. And so here we go, and we're working on it, and I'm talking to the lawyers, and we get down to the day, and it's almost done, but not quite. And then the lawyers who are working with me saying, hey, my kid's got a soccer game tonight. I'm taking my wife to dinner. And, you know, what does it matter? This was the question. What does it matter if we just do this tomorrow morning and finalize and polish up this memo? And I said to them, I'm sorry, but culturally, given the circumstances you're under, the difference between 11:59 on this email and 12:01 is everything. At this point, you know, 3 strikes, you're out, and we need this email to go out with this document tonight. And it was 11:30 when we got it out the door, but it was today's date, and it made the difference. But I really realized that the sharp cultural line, and it saved the client. They have that client today.
Fantastic. Great story. I've got a couple more questions, and then I'll just open it up for any additional comments that you guys have. You know, in terms of globalization and the topic of globalization, one of the things, even one of our members just put out a survey that kind of alluded to the concept that globalization is over, you know, that it's ending, and that it's, you know, we've come to the end of it. And, you know, that's kind of a different perspective than I would have. And I'm wondering how you guys feel about that, because it's all in the news. At least, I mean, you see it all the time in headlines. It doesn't necessarily make it true. What's your perspective, Terri, on, you know, is globalization over?
Sometimes people get focused on the news of the moment, and that's because we take the short view in this country. We are rather self-indulgent on the scale of sacrifice to self-indulgence. We're actually quite self-indulgent, and we're also extremely short-term orientation. If you look at the plans and the goals of long-term orientation cultures, which includes Asia, most of the Middle East, except for India. India is a little more short-term orientation. But many people in Latin America will be long-term orientation because it's relationship-based cultures that will always, in terms of saying, is this trend going to continue? They plan for 100 years from now. They plan for 2 generations from now. And that, you can say, is a globalization orientation because they want expansion, they want more business, they want relationships that will endure long after they're dead. So it's not just a company relationship either. It's a personal relationship because I want to work with Mike or Doug, not because Doug's with Global Chamber, but because Doug can make policy for me. We're friends. He can change the rules. He can adapt and expand to the flexible needs. So globalization is a tagline for, okay, you know, we're all going to communicate more and we're going to become multinational and so forth. It's not a tagline if it's a lifestyle of a long-term orientation. So that's my view.
That makes sense. How do you feel about it, Mike?
Yeah, I think we're not done in the least bit. There's a lot more to be absorbed. And every time let's say a sucker punch hits the system, the whole world has to adjust to a pandemic and oh, it's your fault, et cetera. And then we get over that. We try to survive and bring our economies back and keep our people from being died. But there's other things hitting the system right now internationally that we're seeing absorbed in various countries, and it affects how I practice law and how we do relationships. And that's diversity is a huge pressure on the system. How are different countries going to deal with that inequality in many countries where the top 10% that there's a huge disparity between the top 10% that own everything and then the other 90% that don't, let's say, democratic ideals and what that means, whether some countries think, well, we can afford a little bit of democracy or a lot of democracy, and the expectation of your counterpart. Social responsibility, I was just thinking about Mel Sanderson and her work in the mines for years in Africa, and her job was closely related to, hey, if we're going to go in and we're going to have this concession in doing the mine there, well, we need to provide schools and we need to provide these other things. What is the social responsibility of the incoming party in addition to the legal responsibilities and just the rule of law? We think our contracts are enforceable, and that is not a given everywhere in the world. I mean, some people I'm constantly negotiating contracts, and when we're done, sometimes my clients are surprised. Well, they signed that. Well, yeah, but they have a different view of what that means. That's just a starting point, and in their culture, and legally and the rule of law. I'm not saying that things don't matter, but they have a different view.
Yeah, I agree with that because in Asian viewpoints, that contract is a concession to Western sensibility. It doesn't, it's not grounded in their orientation. But I really liked your explanation, Mike, because also you're looking at it from a different angle than just the economic globalization. We all have a responsibility to help others, but we don't match that with an egalitarian culture. Like the most egalitarian culture right now is in Iceland. And you can look at it every year on the World Economic Forum and see who's at the top of the list. And it's mostly Nordic countries. We're way down the list. So, in terms of DE&I, our population has shifted and it's going to continue to expand in terms of quote unquote minority populations, but we don't practice the orientation towards helping and sustaining all of the diverse people that live here.
So if both of you could wave a magic wand to impact the world in a faster way, what would some of the things be that you'd like to change?
You go first.
Go ahead, Terri.
No, you go first.
Well, more trade, less shooting at each other. Of course,
that would be. Yeah.
I would rather than we spend our millions and billions, flying our jets and dropping things and producing weapons. I'm not I know there is a moment when things collide and things must be done and people protected and lives lost, and there's that's above my pay grade and I have views on that. However, I think we could all agree that if our relationships were stronger and more peaceful worldwide, I mean, I don't want to be like the contestant at the beauty contest who says world peace, but seriously, the expenditures that we're making, worldwide on conflict, if we could, if there was more trade, I think there's less conflict, more tendency to work things out and toward peace when we're trading with each other. But at the base of trading with each other, that means better relationships. And I think that we have stereotypes that just are hard to get over, even in our culture, our ethnocentrism at times, believing that we're the only thing on the planet. I love America. I'm a great patriot for our country, yet I'm also a humble understander that there's a big world out there and it has a lot to offer, and we need to appreciate and love the neat things we see worldwide and be global citizens. And if we can get more of us on that board, I think we will have more peace and spend less on conflict.
Part of it is then exposing people to those opportunities, I presume, right? So that
right.
Terri had it burning in her for a long period of time, but most people don't, right? They have their own lives. They're doing whatever it takes to survive. And so thinking about global isn't part of kind of the equation. So thank you for sharing that. What do you think, Terri?
I agree with everything Mike said. I also would add that, safety is one of those primary drivers. And many people in the world, the majority probably, don't feel safe because of illness or poverty or lack of communication or access to education or healthcare. So getting people to that level just for basic needs and safety. And then the other aspect is respect. Most people in international business have to have a modicum of respect for the people that they're working with, even if they have tremendously exotic backgrounds, some sort of different meal every minute and beliefs, and maybe they don't shake your hand, or maybe they stand too close or too far away, or they smell different, they won't look you in the eye. There's a million things that happen. But if you respect the environment when you go there and the people that you meet, you get along. And people are very forgiving in general of a faux pas here or a mistake there. But it has to be predicated upon, self-worth, being safe, and respecting the other.
I love that. And you also bring to me, what you bring up is the concept of the self-love. I respect myself. I respect my spouse and my children and my neighbor. And then the concept of international, we've been talking about the differences, right? And intercultural means we're all different, but really, aren't we the same? And, how do we tap into that part of us? You bring up Maslow's hierarchy, right? The basics of, we want to have a roof over our head. We want a better life for our children. We want to, there's certain things that we all need and want. And so there's so much similarity amidst the differences. I wonder how does that all weave into your thinking on a day-to-day basis?
I love how the Dalai Lama approaches things. He has always been the icon for understanding that we are the same. But, in effect, we're all exceedingly different. But fundamentally, we have such similar genetic makeup, such a profound need for specific things that you talked about. So yeah, every environment has its thought leaders and its spiritual leaders, and there's a thread that goes through all of them that is very similar, whether it's the Golden Rule or the 4 pillars of Islam or the 5, Buddhist, help me, it's like pillars, but all of us have those basic requirements in order to thrive. And so, yeah, that's a similarity. And if you just remember that, you can overcome the issues that come with international travel, like being more patient, because yes, people are going to miss their deadlines, and trains aren't going to be there on time, and like in the US. And we're no different. We have all those same faux pas.
Really good thinking. It occurs to me that we focus all our energy, or a lot of energy, internationally on the differences, and sometimes the similarities get lost. They're harder to see because the skin color or the clothes or the food or the dance, all of these things are different. But in some ways, that's somewhat superficial until you start doing business. And now decisions like how do you bear bad news, like these things, create that same kind of an interface that says, hey, this person's different. And it takes drinking with them, or getting to know them, like Mike, you did with all of these different families that you did. How do you make the connection? You made the connection because you're meeting 34 families. Was it 34 a day or a week?
A week.
A lot of 34 a week. That's a lot of connectivity, and to be accepted and to get that soda that you talked about, you had to do a lot of listening and connecting. And people don't have the time for that, right? So how do we extend this concept that you two both really fully understand to a broader part of the communities that we live in, whether it's our own employees or companies or even beyond that?
Well, when I go to the law school career day every year from my alma mater, and they have me sitting at a table that says corporate securities M&A on my little tag, and there's nobody over there for international, and the other guy didn't show up for personal injury, so I turn his over and write international on it in pen, and 8 people line up behind the international. Nobody wants to talk to me, the M&A guy. So I scoot my chair over, and they all have the same question. Do you get to travel? And I say, no, not really. You get to get up at 5 in the morning and take the telephone call, with the time difference. That's what you get to do. But we're in a Zoom world now, which we've all been, taught to use this. And we appear in little boxes. And one of my clients, who's a Meta expert, technology expert, says Mike, it's going to be very different in another year here, with Meta. But I guess one of the things I think in terms of that common ground that we're trying to build, back to your question, I think going into a negotiation, going into a conference call where there are 8 people on here, to try to be the person that thinks ahead of time, what are our common goals here? The other people on the other side of this deal and my clients, can I be the person that leads out with, we're all excited that we're going to create this new widget and we're going to take things by storm, and with your expertise of your firm and ours, and put together in a collaborative way, look what we can do together. If you can be the person to lead off and set the tone of common ground, it's amazing to me how you can draw out of that cross-cultural partner what they have to say about how they're excited about what we're about to do here. Yeah, there's going to be some problems we need to work out in clause 38 on indemnity, but let's talk about what's the excitement that brought us to the table here, and not forget that.
Interesting. Terri, anything to add?
I think that it's moving in that direction because with Mike's background in the law, I know that international law wasn't even a thing before 9/11. That's when Harvard started with their international law program. And now it's one of the leading environments, leading, focus environments for the law. Whereas, you have estate planning or other kinds of corporate environments. So international law or marketing or all of these things, it aligns with education. And that's really the bottom line in my mind, is that's why the books work. That's why the online work that we do is important, because it's the most influential, I think, in the next few years area of education is international aspects, intercultural communication, negotiating styles, business practices, protocol, all of that. But you also have, in this country, we don't have the sensibility towards history and traditions that other countries do. I mean, in France, you take Le Bac and you have in there a 3-hour essay question just to get out of high school. It's one of the questions is on philosophy. And so they'll have an essay question and compare Cicero to Aristotle's view on death or something. And you've got to write about it for 3 hours. You try and do that here in the US, what kid knows who Cicero is? And so it's the difference sometimes in our awareness of the value of education, because also we're so young, and other parts of the world where in China, they're always talking about 5,000 years of history. So sure. Education is key.
I had a question that I remembered that I wanted to ask you to make sure that we, especially with Mike here. So you've got this series, and when you had the idea of tailoring it toward corporate counsels and attorneys, what's different? Is it a broader spectrum of topics? Is it a deeper dive on some particular areas? Tell us a little bit more about what you've done with this latest series, and then what would be next? Or is there a logical next step, like another group of people that you'd want to tailor the stories to?
We're pretty stubborn, aren't we? We're pretty stubborn, aren't we, Terry?
It's funny because if I hadn't been hired by the American Bar Association and a couple of Philadelphia Bar Association and some other bar, or out in Denver and so forth, to do presentations, because they heard about me through DRI, the Voice of the Bar, Tag Law, I wouldn't have even known that this was kind of a different field for them. But once I started doing these presentations and it was getting voted like this was the best one of your conference, I thought maybe you guys could use a book. And so what the difference is here is, if you take different cultures, you're talking about Sharia law and rabbinical law and the rule of law and common law and civil law and everything else can be folk law. There's folk law. And learning about legal anthropology to me was so interesting. And so I do comparative analysis a little bit in there, but really what I'm doing is I'm taking it totally differently than the other books. To start with, I did topics. So if you did a presentation with me, a normal one, you'd start with greetings or body language, and then you'd go to communication styles and concepts of why is it a crime here and not a crime there, or, all kinds of topics. So there's topics in this book which are not in any of the other books. How do you pick a jury? How do you tell if somebody's lying? In different cultures, you can't, because their gestures and their body language are different than here. So all kinds of issues. And then because lawyers have no time, I made the country profiles really brief. You can have 1 page on 40 countries and get enough data right there. At least you're cooking, you're on the path. So that's what's different. It's topical, and then the briefs are brief.
Interesting. Mike, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say I do a lot of distribution work for clients. I have 3 clients that distribute worldwide in 50 countries, 60 countries, and 100. And I'm working with local counsel frequently, and I'm on a particular client, there's 5 things that I really care about in this contract. And so I will have an initial call with local counsel, and we're talking through it and say, is this enforceable? Can we get this? Can we even get an exclusivity? I mean, we're going to put it in the contract and they're going to agree to it. But if everything falls apart, is that even enforceable? Can you enforce this? And of course, in the Middle East, a lot of is where I found that almost all 5 of those terms needed to be modified substantially. Latin America, a little different on the exclusivity and the other. But, I'm working constantly in whether we need a by-column agreement even, and which column controls the this language or English, you know what I mean? Which one controls in the event of a dispute? And is it worth creating a translation right now so that when there is a dispute, people don't argue in court for 3 months over which translation governs, those kinds of things. And it does make a difference in clause 21 when it said this. In English, it said this. In Spanish, it said that. And they're not exactly the same. And they'll all argue over the nuances. So I'm working through those things regularly with my clients. And of course, every client wants a 1-page contract that covers everything. They just keep it simple. Why do you need 40 pages? But I'm trying to find the balance and talk about risk and encouraging my clients, coaching my clients that they need to accept some risk, that nothing's perfect. And you're doing international. Hello, didn't you realize that, we're not going to be able to just, make this perfect for you, and collection internationally extremely difficult. If something goes wrong and you're harmed, you could probably get a judgment here in the US, but then have fun taking that to a foreign country and enforcing that judgment there. Or are we going to choose their jurisdiction for dispute resolution? And there's substantial, in the US, when someone from Omaha and someone from Phoenix want to do a contract, the discussion's a little shorter, but when they're working with Belgium, we need to talk about the 2 jurisdictions and what's going to happen if there's a problem, and what is it you need to protect under the contract, but then think about this and think about the relationships too. Are you going to be willing to drop the hammer and really go whole hog to the mat and and be a heavy, or are you going to have to work these things out? So here's my coaching: when things start to fall apart, stop delivering for a while. Get on the phone, talk these things through. The importance of communication and keeping the relationship solid are far more important than trying to fall back on Mike's contract as the be all and end all.
That's incredibly good advice. Just get back on the phone, because I don't care if you're in Italy or India. If you do go to court, first of all, India has one of the largest backlogs in the world. It'll take you a decade, right, to get through. And the problem, no matter how grave it is potentially solvable if you get on a plane actually and go there and sit down with the people and figure it out person to person. Give them your cell phone number. Stop with the privacy issues, try and build that relationship. So I agree completely.
So those are universal issues. So thank you for sharing those. A last question, and then also just an opportunity for you to make any closing comments that you'd like to make, each of you. Maybe we start with Mike. The question is, and then please feel free to elaborate both on the question and anything else you'd like to share about what we've talked about today or anything else. Is global good?
Yes, it is. And is it worth it? Yes, global is good. And is it worth it? And I'm telling my clients, it's going to be in addition to all the other things I'm going to tell you, it's going to be enriching for you personally and for your company. And it's going to teach you things that you never saw before. And if you go out and make that first initiative, cross-border or multiple, your team will grow. They will feel engaged. You're gonna have workers who want to stay at your company because this is exciting. And but in addition to that, you're gonna have you are gonna kind of beat out the competition. I mean, yes, your legal costs are higher. Yes, your import-export issues are higher. Yes, your cross-cultural issues are higher. Yes, you're going to have to figure out this that aren't your normal accounting system, and how you collect is they're going to have to get in the groove and do some new things and develop some. They're going to have to grow. It's going to have growing pains at your company. But when you've done it, your competitor over there that hasn't done all those things has a higher bar that they're going to have to come in, and they're behind the curve, and it's a huge investment for them. So get out there and invest and create some competitive advantage, but not just for that. I have clients who only 10% of their sales are international, but it is the most profitable 10% because of the fungibility in the U.S. There's so many other competitors. Their margins are a lot less. Their international margins are higher once they've made the investment, got there and done it. But I say to them, but just also do it for there's going to be some joy in this. Your employees are going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy it. Don't miss that part.
Mike Patterson, attorney and partner with Spencer Fane, based in Phoenix, and clearly a globally minded leader. Terri Morrison is a speaker and an author. The book Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands is a long time series, came out over 30 years ago, and she's continued to evolve it and modify it and apply it in so many different ways, including her series with corporate counsels and attorneys. Terri, is global good?
It's superb, but you want to be smart about it. So my first step, if you don't have a Mike or you don't have a Doug and you're not connected, is hire a diverse employee from an environment that you would like to market to. So if you have nobody on your staff that speaks Spanish or Chinese or whatever, it might behoove you to go look at the local higher educational institutions and their divisions and take an intern and start thinking through what does it take in every level of the trade issues. And then you connect with Doug and you connect with the U.S. Foreign Service and you connect with Chambers of Commerce, because you want to already have that intro. You want them to do the work for you on the legal issues and the marketing barriers and so forth. But you want to have somebody on staff who knows more than you do about that country. And then they help you. They have those connections. You hire that Brazilian attorney, you automatically now know a whole network of attorneys. And that's how the French do it. The French don't look at your W-2 when they hire you. They look at where did you go to school, who's your family, what are your connections, let me analyze your handwriting, all sorts of things that we don't even think about. But that's why Sanofi works, or whatever firm you're with. So you want to change the approach to say, okay, everybody's going to look like Doug and Mike, to let's get some diversity, some richness, some beauty in this firm, and then look at penetrating those markets in a brilliant way.
Great thoughts. And one of the other things I tapped into there of what you said was going back to what Mike also said was relationships. And, not just having a relationship, but maintaining a relationship. And that requires not only tapping into what's similar and the same between people, but also understanding and respecting what's different. And both of you touched on that topic over and over. So really appreciate that. And as we started, if we could only do that more universally around the world, it would be a better place in the world. And that's why we're doing Global is Good. We've started the initiative with these two speakers today. We really love the fact that you've taken the time to share your insights and your experience and your visions for a better world that we can create. Thank you, Terri. Thank you, Mike, for taking the time, and have a great rest of the day. We're gonna end the program now.
Thank you. Been a pleasure. Ciao.
Thank you. Pleasure.